Greetings, Tiger families, and welcome to our Tiger Family Talks webinar. We are so thrilled to have you joining us tonight. I know that I have people joining us on Facebook Live and on Zoom, so I'm going to give everybody just a minute on Facebook Live to hop on in. While they do that, I will say hello to all of our Zoom users. My name is Lindsay McCrory, and I have the pleasure of serving as the manager of Parent and Family programs. Our office is 100% dedicated to you, our Tiger families, and by now we assume that you've maybe tuned in to a past Tiger Family Talks webinar, and maybe you already know a lot about our office. But if you don't, and this is your first webinar, we want to welcome you and encourage you to take a look back at all of our past webinars. We have our YouTube page. That's a wonderful resource. So I think everybody's tuned in by now. I'm going to say welcome again to all of our Facebook Live viewers and welcome everyone else. Thank you. Tonight's topic is all about preparing for upperclassmen living. We've seen lots of chatter. We've received lots of questions from families about this topic, especially if you're a first-year family, you have a first-year Tiger. I'm sure you're curious what to expect, and we want to help provide resources, tools, and tips so that you know you can make the best decision, what's going to be the best for your Tiger. So I am going to jump right into a couple of questions and logistics. So if you are joining us via Facebook, then you can just use the comment section if you have any questions, or if you want to let us know any of the answers to the poll questions that we're about to start. If you are joining via Zoom, then you can use the Q&A feature at the top of your screen, or maybe it's at the little bar at the bottom. Either way, that's how you're going to submit a question for our presenters and our panelists, but you can use the chat feature to actually interact with, engage with each other, and then answer these poll questions. So we want to see where everybody is joining us from, and we want to know just a little bit more about you. So first, if you can let us know, what classification is your Tiger? So in the chat on Zoom, on the comments on Facebook, let us know. We want to get a feel for who's joining us today. So it looks like everybody's pretty much putting freshmen so far. Awesome. I see some of you are putting from where. So freshmen from North Carolina, that's awesome. Jaden, a sophomore, perfect. Let's see how people are doing on Facebook, where people are joining us from, and let's see. All right, lots of freshmen, perfect. Texas, okay, sophomores. All right, so we have a mix of freshmen and sophomores, it looks like. Okay, our next question is your Tiger considering on-campus or off-campus housing for next year? So does your Tiger want to live on campus or off campus? You can put unsure, maybe you're exploring both options. Oop, they are flying in super fast. Awesome, everybody looking at both. Off campus, on campus, not sure. Okay, there's a big range. All right, good deal. Either way, we're going to share lots of great content about both areas, so stay tuned for tonight's session. Okay, my last question for you. How familiar are you with the housing application process and portal? And when I talk about that, I'm referencing the on-campus housing application. So even if your Tiger is a freshman or first-year student, maybe they live on campus already in a residence hall, so that would mean that you're slightly familiar, most likely, because the processes are similar, and our presenters from Residential Life are going to go into that. So very familiar, slightly familiar, or not at all. And I'm seeing a lot of slightly and not at all. So it looks like no one is very familiar, which is probably why you're here. You want to get that information so that you can be familiar with it. Oh, Malachi says pretty familiar, so he is confident. That's awesome. Hi, Malachi. All right, I think we have a good gauge on how people are feeling. So I want to jump right into our content. We are going to feature a presenter from LSU Residential Life to talk about the on-campus apartment contracting process and everything that you need to know to be prepared for that. And then we're going to go over some off-campus housing resources, followed by a panel of some current LSU students and parents to help answer your questions and share their perspective about on-campus versus off-campus living and anything you need to know to be prepared for that. So without further ado, I'm excited to turn it over to my friend and colleague, Samantha, who is the Assistant Director for Marketing Communications at LSU Residential Life.
Hi, everyone. As Lindsay said, my name is Samantha. Shout out to all my Texas Tigers. I'm from Dallas, so always love to see that we have more fellow Texans coming over to LSU. So I'm really excited to talk to y'all about the on-campus housing application process and what that's going to look like. And so we'll just go ahead and jump right into it. And we will get started. So first thing I always love to tell people is if you have, oops, what's going on presentation? Where you at, girl? If you ever have any questions with the application process or with what's going to go on with housing, I always recommend that you start with our website, lsu.edu/housing. Sorry, y'all, I don't know what's going on with my computer. She's having a day. But that is the best place to start for all things housing. We have all of the information about the apartments, what rates are, what kind of leasing terms you can expect, all that stuff. So always start there. And then you also are going to want to, if you need to reach us for anything, always start by reaching out to us at housing@lsu.edu. That's the best way to make sure that we can keep track of the conversation, make sure that you're being addressed in a timely manner. So always, always, always hit us up there. So I just want to show you all a quick little vid about, why should you even consider living on campus? What's the deal there? So our quick little vid right there, it shows you the number one benefit about living on campus. When you live on campus, you're already there. Your activities, your classes, your friends, it is all steps away from your front door. We have actually spoken to a lot of our students, including our student staff, and many of them live off campus. And we've asked them, how long does it take you all to get to and from class every day? And they guessed probably about an hour every day between drive time, parking, actually walking to your classes. That's 5 hours a week that your tiger can get back to do, whatever they want when they live on campus. So we love that being on campus puts you so close to the heart of LSU. So we have 3 apartment complexes on campus. We have the East Campus apartments, which you guessed it, are on the east side of campus, really close to the bookstore. We have the West Campus apartments, which are closer to the 5 dining hall and the Forest community, if y'all are familiar, Spruce, Cedar, Cypress. And then we have Nicholson Gateway apartments, which are located across the street from campus on Nicholson, right next to the awesome little shopping center with the Thirds. There's a few restaurants, Torchy's, Fat Boys Pizza, great stuff. And of course, love it, right across the street from the stadium. So kind of like I was saying, I'd like to point out where, again, give you a little bit better idea of where on campus all of our complexes are. So you'll see in the middle, the library, the quad, this core part of campus. So we have East Campus apartments right over here, West Campus apartments right over here, and Nicholson Gateway right over here. So it's a great opportunity, depending on what your student is interested in, what they want to be doing, they can select an apartment community that's best going to fit their needs. So, if you have a student who's a biological sciences major and is going to work in the lab, ECA might be a great option. We also have the honors housing in ECA. So if your honors tiger wants to continue living in that residential college experience, they can do that as a sophomore or above in East Campus apartments. Or say your student, is an athlete or an athletic trainer. So WCA or Nicholson Gateway might be a better fit for them because that's going to be closer to some of those activities. So I know the question on y'all's mind is, okay, love the apartment. When can I see it? We are so excited this year to be doing our in-person apartment tours Once again, we unfortunately were not able to have folks in the halls last year due to safety, but this year we're able to start hosting those tours again, and we are so thrilled. So we are going to be doing tours. You'll see the schedule here of both East Campus apartments and Nicholson Gateway apartments. And you might be saying to yourself, Samantha, I want to see WCA. Well, the good thing is that ECA and WCA, you're going to have the same floor plans, the same layout. So even though we're unfortunately not able to showcase WCA right now, if you go check out an ECA apartment, you'll get a great idea of what to expect at WCA. We also have these fabulous virtual tours on our website that have every single floor plan for all of the apartments. So our Nicholson Gateway showroom, for instance, is a 2-bed, 2-bath, but say you want to check out a studio or a 4-bed, we have all of those virtual tours on our website. So you can browse those at your convenience. Also, another great feature is that there's a measurement tool on there. So if you're like, but how big is the bed or how much space between the bottom of the window and the floor, you can measure all that yourself. It's so convenient and it's so cool. And if you have any future Tigers too, y'all can check out the residential halls the same way with those virtual tours. And take a screenshot of this, or if you want to jot it down later, lsu.edu/housing tours. That is the hub for all things housing tours. That's where you'll find this schedule. You'll find ways to request group or single tours. So that's your best spot to go for tours info. Now, the meat of it, the thing everybody wants to know is, when does apartment leasing start? So if your Tiger already lives in an on-campus apartment, their window to begin leasing starts on February 1st. Tigers who already live on campus in an on-campus apartment get first opportunity to renew their same space for the next year. However, if your student does not already live in an on-campus apartment, their window of time is going to start February 22nd. All of the leasing windows open at 10 a.m. the day of. However, students who don't live on campus yet but want to get into an apartment, they can start their application beginning February 1st. And we strongly encourage students to go ahead and begin that application and create their roommate groups, so that on day of, when it's time for them to select their space, they're not having to worry about filling out the application details. They're ready to go and add the room to their cart. So this is a little bit more of a breakdown of the apartment leasing timeline. So like I said, February 1st, that's when it opens up to everybody, and students who are renewing their same space, that's when they can go ahead and renew that space. On February 4th, that's when students who renewed in the same space can pull in preferred roommates if they're not renewing with their current roommate. Beginning February 8th, that means if you still want to live at ECA or WCA, but you want to switch within one of the buildings, or if you live at Nicholson Bayou, but you want to switch to Canal, that's your window to go ahead and switch within that same community. February 15th, that's for our students who are saying, I already live at ECA or I already live at Nicholson, but I want to move to a different complex. That's when they'll have that opportunity. And then February 22nd is when the all-in starts. So that's when first-year students or sophomores and above who don't currently live in an on-campus apartment, that's when they'll be able to secure their space. One thing I like to tell folks is that if your Tiger is interested in living with someone who is already in an on-campus apartment, but they aren't, that friend or that roommate can go ahead and pull them into the room sooner than that February 22nd date. Kind of like with the first year housing, how the person with the earliest time slot could put everybody in the room. It's the same concept. So if you are rooming with someone who is going to be selecting their space before you, you do have the opportunity to pull them in. So that's always nice. So that's kind of my overview of housing. I know some folks, I saw a lot of y'all were saying, hey, I don't know what this process looks like. I'm not sure what to expect. We have on our Facebook and I believe our YouTube, we have recorded tutorials of going through the entire process. So what it looks like to create the preferred roommate group, what it looks like to add the room to your cart. So I envision that we'll do another one of those live. So stay tuned to our social media for an announcement on that. But if you're like, I'm ready to go right now, there is an option for you to go through our previous videos and check out like what the process is like. And so again, if there's anything else that you need housing related, lsu.edu/live on, that is going to be everything about contract renewal. And that is definitely the first place to go.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Samantha. That was lots of great information. And we will have an opportunity for all of you to ask Samantha questions and her team. So if you want to ask anything now, you can put that in the Q&A. And at the end, we're going to answer all those questions. So we went over the on-campus process and you got a feel for that. We also wanted to talk about a little bit of off-campus information. So we know you may be exploring other options living off campus. One of those, if you decide to live on campus and your tiger is exploring Greek housing, maybe they want to live in their fraternity or sorority house. What we suggest for that is to contact the chapter advisor or president for more information about how to live in the house. And if you have any other specific questions about that process, you can contact our Greek Life team at greeks@lsu.edu. So here are some helpful off-campus housing resources. If you said you know that you want your tiger to live off campus, or maybe you want to explore those options as backup, I wanted to point out just a few helpful things. The first one is the offcampushousing.lsu.edu website. So it's a great resource because it's an option for you to search for off-campus housing listings. It also has, apartment complexes, all kinds of great options. And that is actually done in partnership with an institution that helps LSU. So it is a little bit helpful because it's partly run by LSU. So you can take a look at that. Students actually have to sign in with their My LSU credentials in order to access certain parts of that. So that makes it helpful. And then students can find other roommates for off-campus housing using this website as well. There's a portal. It also has a little resources tab with information about like a housing search checklist, roommate considerations to think about. So, if this is going to be your tiger's first time living off campus on their own like this, maybe it can seem a bit overwhelming. And so there are some helpful things that we encourage you and your tiger to look at together to prepare for that process and make the most of living off campus. I also want to point out that if you're on Facebook, and I think two of the most helpful resources are two LSU parent groups where you can talk to other families about, what their feedback is about off-campus housing, find out about anyone who is subleasing, anybody looking for roommates. It's a great group, so you can join either of those. The first one is the LSU Parents Subleases, Roommates, Housing, and Apartments. And that one is a public group. It has over 8,000 total members. And so you can join that. There's no entry, required. It's all public. Anyone can see what anyone is posting. So that one's a super easy one and get people's opinions. But we also have the LSU Parents Housing and Roommates Facebook group, and that is a private group. It also has over 8,000 total people. So since it's private, you do have to request to join, and you must be a current LSU parent or student in order to join. So they don't allow any realtor postings or outside sources. It's just current LSU students and parents. So you know that you can trust the feedback that you see on that page. It's a forum to get answers to any questions you have about the process. So those are 3 helpful things that we hope you check out. We've also listed those in the chat, so you can reference the link. I also want to mention that we are recording tonight's session and we're going to post it to our YouTube page. So at any point, if you have questions, you can reference that YouTube recording, or you can reach out to our office, or if it's about on campus, you can reach out to housing@lsu.edu. And we'll recap our contact information again. All right, so I am going to jump into the panel portion, and I want you to hear from current LSU students and parents about what they think of the process. They can give you their words of wisdom and tips to ensure this is smooth for you. So I'm gonna ask each of our panelists to turn on their cameras, and I'm gonna have them introduce themselves. The first panelist that I'm gonna call on is Kalita Black. She is one of our parent panelists.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I am Kalita Black, as she stated. I'm from Lawrenceville, Georgia. My son is a senior this year. I think it's like 119 days, 16 days or so before graduation. But this is actually his first year living off campus as a senior. So we can give you lots of good tips, I think. So again, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great perspective to have both. We're also joined by Charmaine Cooper Hussein. She's also a parent.
Hi, everybody. I was in your shoes at this time last year. I was on this call at this time last year. So I can tell you what happened when my tiger, who is a sophomore, ended up in an off-campus apartment.
Perfect. Thank you. Finally, our last parent panelist is Paul Lindenberger.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Paul Lindenberger. We live in Grapevine, Texas. We've got a junior at LSU, and she's done the dorm, on-campus apartments, and then she's off-campus this year. So we've got a little bit of everything, and she's contemplating going back on campus for her senior year to round things out. So she's hopped all over the place, but it's been a great experience on all fronts. So happy to share our experience.
Thank you so much, Paul. We're also joined by two student panelists. The first is Brandon.
Hey y'all, my name is Brandon Huggett. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. It's my 4th year undergrad, majoring in environmental engineering. I got one more year after this, so almost there. A little bit about me. I am actually a resident assistant in Camellia Hall, the engineering hall. So I've saw a few messages in the chat about the RA position. I'm willing to answer any of those questions, but I'm also a 2-time transfer student. So I've been to a few universities. I've lived on campus in the res halls, off campus with family, off campus at an apartment, as well as now I'm on campus, and I do have some experience with on campus apartments. So I'm more than willing to help out on that part too.
You are a wealth of knowledge. Thank you for joining us, Brandon. And then finally, our last student panelist today is Marcus.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marcus Cepeda. I'm a 4th year civil engineering student. I'm from Sacramento, California. I'm involved in Ambassadors, Institute of Transportation Engineers, and LSU Men's Club Volleyball. Since I've gotten to LSU, I've only lived in an apartment style living. 3 of those years was our on-campus apartments at Nicholson Gateway. And this year, my last year here, I'm off campus right near the engineering building. I could talk about that a bit more, but happy to give any input that I can.
Thank you so much to our panelists. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump right into some prompted questions that we have for our panel. If you have any questions, though, if you're on Zoom, I want you to put those in the Q&A, not the chat, please, so that we can make sure that our team over in the Q&A can help answer those. We will answer some of those live as well. And if you're using Facebook, you can put any of your questions in the comments section. So I'm going to start with some off-campus questions about the process. So for anyone who has lived off-campus, you can answer these. First question, what were some of the most important factors to you as you decided between living on campus or off campus? Or as a parent panelist, what were some of the most important factors to you and your tiger making that decision? So Marcus, you can start us off.
Yeah, definitely. For me, I don't like looking back on it now. I don't know if it went about it the correct way, but I think it was like similar to how most students like look into going off campus. And we're looking really at rent, how much space and how much privacy we have and how close we are to campus. Some factors that like I didn't think about that I wish I would have thought about going into it was, for example, like how easy it is to put in a work order or get something fixed at your apartment. On-campus housing like Nicholson Gateway, if my fridge broke, for example, like the light, even if it was like the light bulb went out in my fridge, I'd get it fixed like that day. Whereas off-campus apartments, you could, my washer was broken for a week and a half when I first moved in, kind of thing. So it's definitely like some things you don't think about when you're first going into the process. I didn't have a car at the time, so for me, getting close to being as close to school as possible when I moved to off campus was super important for me. I live right across the street from the engineering building. It's about a 15-minute walk. My watch still marks it down as a workout every time I walk to class though. So it's still a little bit further than I'd like. But really my main thing that I was looking into was price and the privacy. And like I said, now if I were to go back, I would look more into the logistics like parking, like, oh, can my friends come and visit me? Is there visitor parking? How soon can I get something fixed? Is the internet access good there? Is there private study spaces? Some things that just totally went over my head the first time around, but.
That's all really important to note. So I really appreciate that. I'd love to hear from you, Charmaine, since it's all fresh in your mind. When you were weighing and you and your tiger, Simon, were thinking about deciding between living on campus and off campus, what did you consider and why did he ultimately choose to live off campus?
Okay, so I checked in with him before this call and he echoed what Marcus said. His priorities were distance to his classes, most of which are in the music building. So he was really cognizant of that. And then also cost, because he said that living off campus can be cheaper for some students because you're not having to build in the cost of food. I mean, you're obviously responsible for paying for your own food, but it's different than living on campus. And then he was weighing basically Nicholson Gateway with a couple of off-campus places, and it was timed right up to Spring Family Weekend. And he ended up signing a lease 3 days before I arrived for Spring Family Weekend, which he really should not have done without me. So our advice, our failure is please learn from our failure. Please start very, very, very early. Start right now, especially because you can tour this year, unlike last year. And Simon, that's my tiger, he also said, please be careful when your tiger tours an off-campus place because they will try to rope you in by getting you to sign your lease instantly at the end of the tour. Do not let them do this. So I thought that was a good piece of advice.
Yeah, they'll definitely offer you some sort of incentive, like whether that's like $500 off your first month's rent or anything like that. And they're going to show you the best rooms available, the cleanest spaces. So do your research. Make sure either y'all are doing your research or your tiger's doing your research on the back end on like the amenities and like the services that are provided, like not just the space itself. And I'm sure we'll get into more about furnished and unfurnished, but that's just my tip there.
Absolutely. Those are all really good things to note. So thank y'all. Khalida, since your tiger has lived on and off campus, you know, when he initially decided to live on campus, why did he decide to do that? And then why ultimately for his senior year is he living off campus?
So for the most part, his first year, I think his year, that was the first year they required all freshmen to stay on campus. And so he really didn't have a choice, but he did stay in residential hall based upon his college. It was a great experience there, but he came to us this time of year and said, hey, I want to live off campus. So my first question was why? You're going to have to develop for me why you feel living off campus is better than living on campus with all the amenities, your connections, your involvement, to be able to be staying engaged and all of that. And so we approached it from that standpoint. We also looked at the cost, of course. What would the safety be like off campus, the location and things of that nature. And he actually was he didn't have his car his freshman year except his second semester. So we had to navigate through that as well. So once we kind of came to weighing our options in terms of what he thought was best for him versus what as a parent and our money was best for him, was you need to stay on campus. And so we chose the Nicholson Gateway, and it was a very good compromise for apartment style living, but yet you're still on campus, you're still connected to everything on campus, and you still have all of those perks that you would not have, as Marcus has expressed along with Charmaine and all. And so that was how we kind of came to our conclusion of how you're going to stay on campus.
That's a good conversation to have. Brandon, you have lived in several places, so I'd love your perspective. What were some important factors to you as you made that decision between living on or off campus?
Yeah, definitely. I would say the biggest factor for me was commuting. Back when I was at UNO, I lived with family, so it was up to a 15 to 30-minute commute just to get to campus. And if you have like a 7 o'clock in the morning class, you don't want to wake up that early, and you're going to wake up late and you're just not going to go. So commuting was the biggest part for me. So distance to campus, that was the top. And then just the experience, I did want to have that chance of off-campus living. So I had the chance of on-campus living with family. Love their cooking, but I had to get away from them. They're crazy. But I wanted the experience of having like my own apartment and that apartment lease. Probably the one factor that I didn't really take into account is the difficulty sometimes to find apartments and then working it out with your lease, because then you got to look for roommates to make it more affordable. Fortunately, when I did off-campus housing at LSU, I went on that website. I believe Melissa sent it out in the chat. It's offcampushousing.lsu.edu. I created like a roommate profile. I got matched with a couple roommates. They reached out to me. They were the sweetest. I ended up living with them for a whole year, even in the summer. I absolutely loved it. So I would say that's probably the best bet, especially if you're looking off campus. And then on campus, that housing application is very flexible and it easily matches you with people where you can just end up creating those roommate groups and then just discussing how y'all want to live. That's probably the best bet whenever it comes to making that decision.
One thing I might add, since Brandon, you're an RA, correct?
Yes, I'm in Camellia.
So like one of the factors that I know from student side of things is if you're in an on-campus apartment, so the ECA, WCA, Nixon Gateway, is there's an RA in those halls, which to a student might have like the connotation of, oh, somebody's watching over your back the whole time. But I think what I came to learn is like the mutual respect and like just trying to create a safe space and like make sure that the apartment living is super, super secure. So do you like have any thoughts on like why an RA is good for these off-campus like apartment spaces, even though they're upperclassmen?
Yeah, definitely. I would say, because being from my background, the RA position is so flexible because being in the apartments, I'm not an apartment RA, but you're going to encounter upperclassmen. And the difference between the freshman RAs versus the upperclassmen RAs is that freshmen, you have students coming from all different backgrounds. They may not know anything about college or the campus, but these upperclassmen are more knowledgeable, so they're more independent in a way. It's still that chance to build community and that 24/7 on-call resource that you can always call, whether it's a facilities issue or you just want to talk, or just that helpful face right there. And then even going with that upperclassman experience, you're going to encounter transfer students too. And my experience as a transfer student, I'm lost on campus immediately. I still get lost on campus, but it's really just that helpful face. And that's one of those benefits of that on-campus apartment community, is you have like that person who's been on campus, they know the place, and they can always refer you to any resource if they don't know that info.
Can I add something really quick about safety? And I know that's kind of big, particularly not that the male students aren't going to be possibly have some problems, but you really want to think about your female students. And I really found when Chandler lived in Nicholson Gateway, I was like, this is like going into Fort Knox. You had to key in the front door, you had to key into the elevator, you had to key into your room plus add a code. So it's very secure, I felt. And you have to kind of, to me, weigh that out in terms of if your student is going to live off campus, how much security do they have? They park in that parking lot, they go inside. Is there any police or any kind of patrolling that goes along off campus? So I mean, safety was really big for me, and I know my son's a male, but it was very, very, very big for me.
Absolutely. Paul, I think you're the only one with a female tiger. So I'd love your perspective on that, as Kalita just shared, maybe some safety things that you were thinking about having a daughter. And then also, what were some important factors to you and to your daughter whenever you're making a decision if she was going to live on or off campus?
Sure. Yeah, I'll say she loved her experience at ECA her sophomore year. And it was just very convenient. What you see is what you're going to get, and felt very supported. At the same time, she lived with she still lives with those same 3 roommates, but they had a 4-bedroom apartment and decided they wanted their independence and move off campus. So first word of advice is don't rely on 18 to 20-year-old girls to give you a presentation on off-campus living, because you'll get a website and that's all you're going to get. So, but there's a lot of hidden costs and hidden inconveniences when it comes to off-campus as well. Safety was definitely a factor for us. So we were lucky to have one of the roommates have parents that were local, so they were familiar with the complex and could say, yeah, it's a good area and they should be okay. They're completely fenced off in the on-campus apartment. So that was definitely a plus. We'll say to Marcus's comment, as far as being taken care of, she still does not have grout in her bathroom, and she moved in last August. so yeah, they take care of what's most needed, and some of the details get overlooked. But also be careful in going and looking at model apartments, because what we walked into is very different than what was presented and what they looked at as well. But I would say they've enjoyed being off campus from an independence standpoint, but definitely missed the convenience. And she's looking to come back her senior year from a convenience standpoint, but also they're going their separate ways, I think, at this point as roommates. And so they're independently looking for new options, and on campus seems to be a really good solution there.
Those are all good things to note. And one of our parents is asking, because the grout example is really tangible, so appreciate that. I'm going to open it up to any panelists. Will you please speak more about hidden costs or hidden inconveniences as it relates to maybe on or off campus living? And anybody can answer that.
One of the costs that I will tell you to be mindful of, particularly with apartments, and I do work for the insurance industry, but this is something that happens and I knew it was coming, is they're going to generally require some form of insurance, a liability policy. Usually they don't take a parent's policy because they want to add the student's name to that. They're generally going to have to get a separate insurance policy. It's called a renter's policy. And you can get it for as minimum, a lot of times $2,000 to $3,000 for their contents, and then they'll have a liability amount. And that's just to take care of your students if something were to happen on campus with their personal property. And if there's a liability issue that they say, okay, well, Kalita's son damaged the apartment and they're going to possibly sue us. So that's something that you want to definitely keep in mind, that there's a cost to that. A tip with that, I would definitely say do that individually for your students if you have to do that. You really don't want to have all your roommates on your same policy, because that's going to typically follow them if something happens and there's a loss. So you just want to be mindful of that, that's really one cost that you may have to incur rather when you're doing your looking.
Yeah, and to second that, I know the off-campus apartment that we're at, they actually treated it almost like it was a dorm or on-campus apartment with 4 individual contracts and 4 individual. They did require a renter's policy. It's fairly inexpensive, but it is one of those hidden costs. So you've got minimal, you still have to pay utilities, might be minimal, but it's just kind of and then you get off campus and you're paying more for gas and all those other things that kind of go along with it. So yeah, food.
Oh, and shower curtains.
Yes.
And shower curtain rings.
You can't find shower curtain rings anywhere.
There will not be any at Target. No. There will not be any at any place in Baton Rouge. Bring that with you.
I found the last 10 at Big Lots, I think it was.
Yeah, we ended up at Dollar Tree.
Yeah. Very true. So.
Hey, these are important things to think about. Are there any other hidden costs, hidden inconveniences y'all want to mention?
I think you have to just remember to look at the fine print and read all of those, read all of the lease agreements and things before you sign. I mean, we had laid the law down to Chandler. You're not to sign anything until we read everything. And I know it sounds like I'm being tough, but I just know that there's hidden costs and things like that. And like Paul said, they're 18, 19 years old. What do you really know? And so With that being said, you just want to make sure you read all of the fine print, because there could be hidden costs. You get your refund back, your deposit back. How do things like that work in those instances? And the other thing this is just a tip, just in case we don't have time to say it later, is you want to also, if you can, make sure that your lease is independent of each other, because you don't want somebody running out on you and you can't pay that monthly rent. So you want to make sure you have reliable roommates that are going to pay, or that the lease is set up as such that you're only responsible for yourself.
Yeah, one thing that we found out at the apartment that she's at is they do a 12-month lease, but you can only occupy for 11. So you're out at the end of July and you can move in on August 20th, but they take 3 weeks to redo all the apartments. So they kick you out there. And
same happened to us.
Yeah.
That's helpful to note for sure. So we're talking a lot about off campus and really focusing on that right now. So I want to dive back into it. Some factors to consider, which maybe we haven't mentioned yet, are furnished versus unfurnished, proximity to a bus route, security. And so we briefly touched on it, but I want our panelists to dive in a little more. So Marcus, will you jump in about how that weighed in your decision?
Yeah, like I said, I come from out of state. I'm from California. I'm also a transfer student. So I came with literally no items and no intent to make a big purchase on furnishing an apartment. And my parents weren't able to come down to help me out as well. So I figured getting furnished would be the best option. I believe all of our on-campus apartments are furnished. Am I incorrect? Nicholson Gateway was definitely furnished. They all are, yeah. So like that was just the easiest decision for me. I didn't have a car at the time, so being close to campus was the best. For my next apartment that I looked for, I tried my best to find something furnished, and that is not as easy as it sounds. You may have to end up like renting your furnished items. I remember when I looked at it, it was a pretty hefty price for furnishing an apartment for rent. The pros there are somebody tends to drop off that stuff and pick it up when the rent is done. But I ended up, when I moved to my off-campus apartment, it was unfurnished. And I probably spent another month's rent basically just trying to get my bed and dressers and, nightstands and all that, where when I was in Nicholson Gateway, like they had everything there for me. Like the bed was there, the TV stand was there was a desk there, like pretty sure there's a shower curtain on there. But for me, it was just trying to minimize the costs and the efforts that I have to go through, with me trying to start school and moving in at the same time. I didn't want to be moving my own furniture or having to deal with buying furniture myself. So I went to look for the furnished route and it didn't work out. So I was on Facebook Marketplace for weeks looking for a bed and then a desk and then a dresser. But
you found it, right? Hopefully. Yeah.
If I could piggyback off of what Marcus said, we see this a lot in the parent and the roommate groups. Y'all pay attention if you're moving into an unfurnished apartment. There are so many seniors getting rid of their beds, their dressers, and they're willing to let it go for like a very fair price because they do not want to move it home. So that's a great place if you're moving into an unfurnished space. It's a great place to find very, economic priced furniture that will get you through that next year or whatever it is.
Definitely. Y'all will see me in one of those Facebook groups posting all my furniture for sure. So send me an email or anything if you want a bed frame.
Hey, that's good. Making connections. Paul, what was Luna's experience like? Did she do furnished, unfurnished? Was she considering proximity to bus routes, security, all that stuff?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the apartment that she's at is actually on the Texas Trails loop. So she can use it. She hasn't used it very often because it takes a lot of time management. So you have to, determine how long it's going to take you to catch the bus, what time the bus is coming in order to get there on time for your class. And so I'd say 90% of the time she has been in her car and driving to campus. But along with that comes, parking and everything else. So she ends up hoofing it a little further, with parking, because commuter parking isn't as convenient as the dorm or the on-campus options. And so it's pros or cons there. Safety, again, definitely was something that we looked at as parents, just to make sure it was a safe environment and secure, and we were happy with that. As far as the furnished, again, I think we got lucky. We were at when she moved there, it was called the Exchange, and I think now it's called the Legacy. But it was almost like a on-campus apartment off campus, because they did have furnishings. So they provided a bed and a dresser and a desk, similar to a dorm. So we got lucky there. We were looking for shower curtains because that was a surprise. But it's all those little things that you think of after the fact. Do watch out for the frantic call. I need to sign a lease because I get a free air fryer. So yeah, you can stay away from that and just say, no, we're good. We'll look at it and we'll decide there. But we did get that call for sure. But no, it really, I'd say off campus worked out well, just because it had a lot of those amenities that were already built in, whether it was transportation, safety, and the furnishing. But other areas aren't going to be so lucky. So just do your homework.
Charmaine or Kalita, did y'all have anything to add about the off-campus process, leasing, anything?
So Simon is at Lark Baton Rouge, and it is very, very nicely furnished. He has a television, and it came with cable, and a really nice sofa and a coffee table, a nice bed, a desk. The kitchen's great. Unfortunately, I know this from experience because I had to evacuate there after Hurricane Ida. So I actually stayed there for a little while. It was fine. I will say one thing about trying to do this process when you are not physically in Baton Rouge. So if you live anywhere other than Baton Rouge, you're probably going to turn to the internet to look and see, what people think about the apartment complexes that your child is looking at. And unfortunately, in not just Lark's case, but in what we found a lot of cases, and you can see this in the Facebook group, the reviews of these apartments are only on either end of the spectrum. So they are either, this is the greatest place ever, it's paradise, or it's absolutely terrible. There's mold everywhere. There's garbage. It's the worst things you can think of. So unfortunately, I don't think that you can recommend a website like Yelp to help you make a decision. It's really just going to be based on going and getting the vibe, or honestly sticking with on campus, where you have people that you can, like, you have the university that you can trust. So if I could do it again, he would have been at Nicholson Gateway.
And I would say one of the things as a parent, we made sure that we kind of looked at everything in terms of the apartments online as best we could. We did rely upon Chandler to drive around the areas and pick out some areas that we could look at when we came into town. That was one of the things that we did when we made a visit, is we had them lined up. He had narrowed it down. We visited. And if you can visit, not just in the midday, try to drive by at night. You want to just kind of get a good feel for where your child is going to be living. And so we did that. Now, he did go with furnished. But I definitely echo the sentiments with Nicholson Gateway and all the other apartments on campus. They're so nicely furnished. I mean, we just had to really bring a television, and then his clothes. Outside of that, everything was there, except we did have to get the shower curtains, but I brought mine. So with that being said, you have to really get out there and tour those places and just, like I said, drive around. Chandler's apartment, just if somebody wants to know, his is Wildwood Apartments. It's a gated townhouse setup. It's about 1.5 miles from campus. And he told me it takes probably about 10 minutes to actually get to campus. Now, where you park and the proximity of getting to your classes and things like that, that adds on. So again, I know I have said it before, but you want to ask your student why. Why do you want to be off campus? Because the other thing is, your student. Are they responsible enough to know, oh, I get up at the last minute? Well, you don't want to get up at the last minute. You may have to be, you don't want them to speed to the dorm or to the campus and things like that. So you want to tie all of that in all of your conversations about living off campus, particularly since most I see the guests are freshmen. You just do they have that maturity to deal with off-campus living at this age? And like I said, we didn't allow Chandler, and I kind of got outvoted. his senior year, because I would have opted for him to stay on campus, but it has worked out for him. One of the things he did mention to me is make sure you know how many people you're planning on living with, because that does make a difference in what you're looking for. You do have options to rent houses there. Is that something you want to do? Landlords might work out the same way as Marcus and Paul's daughter, having things not coming in, working out for you, because you're at their mercy. And I'm just pro on campus. I really am. But like I said, it has worked out for Chandler. He knew his roommates going into the process. And if you don't know a roommate, or if you're going to get someone that you really don't know, I feel like you're taking a chance, because you have to be able to know, are you going to be able to study like Marcus said? Are you going to have that quiet time and things of that nature? Are they going to bring all their partying friends? How is the apartment set up to where you have security in your own space, in terms of, hey, if I'm not there, can somebody just be roaming around in my room? Now that's just me, but
Absolutely. Those are all really great things to talk about or to think about. You mentioned roommates, so I wanted to jump into that. How did you find roommates? So I know that Brandon, you said you had a really good roommate experience. Do you want to go into that and dive in a little more to how you found that roommate and why it worked out?
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't count my mom and dad as roommates when I was living in UNO. But for off-campus living last year, I ended up finding them on the off-campus housing website. Salman and Ari, they were one of the best roommates to actually have. But like I said, you really fill out those profiles, and then I wouldn't say just hop onto the first person that finds you and just start immediately making a decision to want to live with them, or try and start that agreement, but really just settling down, take a couple days to actually make that decision, start making like a roommate agreement almost. Like, what kind of furniture are you going to be bringing? What are you, a night owl? How many people are you planning on bringing? What's your lifestyle, basically? Because for a month and a half, we did not have a dining room table. And for about half a year, we didn't have a couch. So it was little powwows on the floor, but that was fine with us. So it's really just comes down to, how are you going to get along with them, and taking the time to get along with them before you really move into that living situation with them. That's off campus wise. On campus wise, you have that sense of security as well, where you have that RA there too. So if you're having a roommate conflict or suite mates, whatever that apartment situation is, you have that RA there that's a mediation source, where you just talk to them like, look, you're not doing the dishes. But it's not going to be like accusations. It's really like, I feel that this situation's a little bit messy. So on campus, you have that resource that helps you out. And even if you get stuck with a roommate that you may not enjoy, you have that mediation source. Off campus, I would say really just take the time to get to know them before you actually end up trying to live with them.
I love that you provided perspective from both options. So thank you so much. Does anyone have anything to add about how your Tiger or you found roommates?
I was a random roommate. I found my random roommates all my years, or my first 2 years here, actually. After the second year, he kind of became a friend of mine, and we decided to room again. It's really just up to your Tiger. For me, I knew that being in school, like, I could not be friends with my roommate because I'm just not around, and I'm not willing to give my time in my own apartment to be like really just socializing. Like, that's usually where I was doing my work, especially when COVID was happening. Just making sure, if you do have a random roommate, if you're in an on-campus apartment, you'll get a roommate agreement form from the RAs where you fill out, expectations on, like, dishes, what time you go to sleep and stuff like that. If you have an off-campus roommate, make sure you learn enough about them to feel comfortable living with them. But that's it.
I have a terrible suggestion. I have a terrible suggestion. So my son's not currently speaking to his roommate, and they have not spoken since about Thanksgiving. They did know each other before they moved in together. They met in a class that they had together, and his roommate is 2 years ahead. So he is a senior this year. And supposedly they're not getting along because of petty stuff, like, you used my coffee cup. Both of their bedrooms have locks, and they are both currently using those locks. But what I think really happened is that my son got a girlfriend and is spending a lot of time with her. So my advice is that if you have a child who is single and is open to dating, that you probably should not have them go into a situation where the two or more people who are going to be roommates expect to be socializing, because you just never know if you're always at your boyfriend's house or always at your girlfriend's house. I think that has hurt my son's roommate, because my son's just not there. So there needs to be expectations in advance, like Marcus says. You're great, but we're not going to be friends. I know that's a terrible, like, hard thing to say, but you don't want to not be speaking to your roommate.
That's tough and something a lot of people don't think about. So I appreciate you sharing it.
Thanks.
We focused a lot on off-campus because we had the on-campus, presentation, but I wanted to get back to on-campus living. And I wanted to ask our panelists, what was the on-campus housing, application process like? And, was it easy to navigate? How involved were your parents or you as a parent in that process with your student for on-campus housing?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I filled out the on-campus housing application 3 times. Super easy, super fast. Finding a roommate would have been easy if I was looking for one. My parents did not help too much on that end, just because the information was all there for them. Like, they didn't really have to look into my on-campus situation. They were more concerned when I moved off campus. But I will advocate for Nicholson Gateway for forever. Like, that apartment complex is amazing. The RAs are great in there. All of the staff in there are fantastic. From start to finish, like from the very beginning of the process to the end, like, it's just so easy. And like, filling out a work order to get something fixed is easy. Finding the RA for any help is so easy. I lived above the grocery store. Like, that's so convenient. I lived next to a Wendy's and a Starbucks, right across the street from Tiger Stadium and the track and field. And the list goes on and on. And like, how good of a situation it was for me, in my opinion. But yeah, the process was great, and super easy for your students to do it themselves if they felt they needed to, wanted to.
As a parent with Chandler, we pretty much hands off when he applied for Nicholson Gateway. He was more familiar with the platform of even going in and getting the application completed. He had arranged with his roommate. His Nicholson Gateway, he only had one roommate. So they had gotten together and arranged, that they would be each other's roommates, and it worked out for them. But we really were not involved other than provide the money for the deposit.
Yeah, same here. I mean, she handled the process from beginning to end, and it showed up on a fee bill. I don't have to make a rental payment every month for an apartment, which is great. So the hardest work was just moving her in. So she was in the second story. So on campus, I frankly was I would say our preference and our better experience out of the two as well. So pretty consistent with other panelists there. But there's pros and cons either way. I mean, they feel a little bit more independent being off campus. You just need to make sure it's a safe environment.
Safe in that they're just ready. Like I said, I think going back and having that initial conversation, particularly as your student is a freshman, why do you need to be off campus? Just make sure you have that hard conversation. I mean, you want them to be mature. You want them to have their independence. This is their time of their lives, these next 3 years. But you as the parent, you're still funding this. You still know your child the best. You need to take all of that into consideration. And like I said, for us, it was Nicholson Gateway was our compromise of living off campus versus, staying on campus. And I mean, he was very happy there, but I guess it's a rite of passage. I don't know, to be a senior and have to have an apartment. I don't know.
Yeah, you know what you're going to get with on campus.
Right. Yeah. And it's a good experience. I just think personally, if I had to say something about when to do it, I would say wait till you're a senior. I mean, I just feel you've gotten a lot about, you've gotten yourself acclimated to everything, to school and everything. And it might be a good time to take that next step, because you will be moving on and possibly, hopefully, grad school, or if not, just being out on your own. But I personally feel they need to wait until they're right there at the end. They've got that maturity level, they've got their time management down and things of that nature. But just kind of keep all of that in mind, parents, because at the end of the day, you just want them to be happy, but you want to make a good compromise that's best for your student and for you.
Definitely. I like that point, Kalita, of like they will be graduating at some point and moving on, because I didn't sign my first lease, my own, I had my Nicholson Gateway ones, but that was a couple of click next and submit. But like looking at a real lease until I was going into my senior year. And, that same summer, I had to look for an apartment for my internship in Austin, Texas, you know what I'm saying? Which is like a whole new thing for me. But the guidance there, like that time, being a senior, a little bit older, being able to ask my mom some technical questions about what these words are on the lease, like definitely helped me out a ton at the end there.
Oh, if I could just add one thing about living, sorry, Brandon, living in the on-campus apartment, is that we are completely student focused. And what I mean by that is, like, there's a lot of great opportunities in college. There's opportunities to intern out of state. There's opportunities to study abroad. And when your Tiger has those opportunities, but lives, they're in a year lease, we're going to allow them to break that lease so that they can pursue that opportunity without having to worry about subleasing, or like, what am I going to do? Or if your Tiger graduates early, we're going to break their lease, and then it does go onto the fee bill, but it is taken off. So a lot of parents are like, you said, and I'm like, trust the process. But it's completely student focused so that we can make sure that your Tiger is worrying about grades or experiences or getting their portfolio ready, and not like, I have to find somebody to sublease or else I can't take this amazing opportunity. And then I also like to remind people that because it's on your fee bill, like some of our panelists have said, any like grants or scholarships or aid that you have, just get directly applied to that. You don't have to worry about waiting for a direct deposit or anything like that. Everything is taken care of with your fee bill. So that's just an extra convenience.
And Samantha, since you're already on, we had a question in the chat on Facebook. So maybe you already addressed this and I missed it, but a family was asking, like, what if we're looking for fall only housing? And so you would suggest on campus for that. If their student wants to study abroad in the spring, that would be the best bet.
Yeah, I would definitely say it would depend, like, why do they need that? If they're just like, I only want it, I'm not sure we're able to accommodate that. But yes, if they're doing study abroad, if they know they're going to have an internship, if they know they're going to graduate early, you sign the lease for the year or for the 9 months. But after the semester ends in December, after you graduate or, move on to whatever that next step is, we're able to break your lease.
That's great information. I know, speaking of breaking leases, Trina over in the chat says that her son signed a lease without her. And so how can she get out of it? Anybody have any tips for that one?
I do. I don't have good news. When my son signed the lease 3 days before Spring Family Weekend, I called his father on the way home from Spring Family Weekend and said, how do I get him out of this lease that he signed? My ex-husband is an attorney, and he said it's really not possible. And if it is possible, it needs to be on him to break the lease, not on his parents.
Subleasing on those Facebook group pages
That's
is
true.
an option. Just like mentioning, going on those pages and being like, I had this year-long lease for this apartment complex, 1 bedroom, all the details. And you might, people are typically looking for, like, whether it's a grad student or a transfer, like they'll usually get snagged up. But other than that, like, she's absolutely right. Like, you're pretty much locked into those. Another option for my case this year, I live in like a townhouse kind of an apartment where my friend owns, like, his dad owns the apartment or that particular room or something like that. Anyways, there's these other communities around LSU that are like townhouses, and if you're like looking for some more security, they're usually like owned by students' parents, and that's a little bit more comfortable. That was more comfortable for my parents to hear that I was going through like another parent rather than like a landlord or somebody. But subleasing is the best way to go there.
I'm going to echo that, Marcus. I know this is like, I shouldn't say it, but I'm going to say it. Anytime a parent's like, but what if I can't get an on-campus apartment? I always tell them, consider those privately owned townhomes. It's a more personal touch. A lot of times it is parents of students or former students. They're really great to work with, and pricing wise, I think it's very competitive with those other off-campus options.
And safer.
And since you mentioned it, Samantha, since I see that we answered the question in the Q&A, but it's in the chat as well, what about capacity? Do some students have to stay off campus because there are no spaces available for them if they want to live on campus in an apartment?
It depends year to year. I'm sorry, I can't give a more specific answer to that than that. It depends how many students are wanting to live on campus. Do we have a ton of students who are graduating and so they're not renewing, or do we have a lot of interest in it? It really depends. That's why I always encourage students, if you're not already an on-campus apartment resident, to be ready at 10 a.m. when those applications open, when the leasing opens for the all-in. Now, I always tell people don't panic too, because we have a wait list and stuff changes. People, they decide they're doing something else for the fall. They want to live with their brother, their cousin moved, whatever it is. So if you don't get the apartment of your choice, or if you don't even get an apartment, you can join the wait list, and we work that throughout the summer, leaving you plenty of time by like July, so that okay, I either got that space that I wanted or I didn't. So we do have that option as well.
Definitely don't be late. On my end, I was kind of on the fence on being off campus or on campus. And so I just never ended up filling out I was already in a Nicholson Gateway apartment, like loved my space, but I didn't fill out the application again. And by the time like I was just like still on the fence about it, it was just too late. Like I couldn't even choose Nicholson Gateway as an option anymore. And like I knew immediately that I would regret not filling out that application. So if your Tiger is like considering one way or the other, it might be best just to fill out those on-campus apartment applications to secure your spot. I wish I had, for sure.
Yeah, my son said the same thing. Do it early. Definitely do it that early. Want to add just one little quick is thing to say about safety again. And this is more so in terms of weather safety. You don't always know the area in terms of like, there's a lot of flooding in Baton Rouge, there's a lot of rain in Baton Rouge, and of course we know about the hurricanes. I would definitely say and vote your Tiger is safest on campus. It's just the bottom line. To me, that's the safest place they can be in most cases. Now, Chandler didn't have any problems after the last hurricane with his apartment or anything, but you can definitely be assured again, and I'm saying this more so with your freshman and sophomore kids that are ready to move out. They're probably still going to be their safest on campus in those types of situations. That's for sure. You'll still be able to have food, access to food. Probably the power's still going to stay on. They'll still have their Wi-Fi and things like that. So that's just another something to add to parents thinking the kid needs to stay on campus.
Awesome. Well, we have answered a ton of questions, and I think our panelists have given you lots of really great insight and feedback. If you have any questions for any of our panelists specifically and you'd like to connect with them, please feel free to email our office at lsufamily@lsu.edu. We are happy to connect you with them if you want to continue those conversations. In addition, as Samantha mentioned, if you have any questions for residential life, go ahead and shoot them an email and reach out to them at housing@lsu.edu, and then start browsing their website. So if you have any more questions, go ahead and put those in the Q&A and we will continue to answer those, or you can put them in the comments on Facebook. But I want to take this opportunity to thank our panelists. We really appreciate your feedback, and thank our presenters. As I mentioned, we're staying on a little bit longer, but I just want to thank everybody for the great feedback. So I wanted to share a couple more things. Okay, so we talked about those leases. All right, so on our website, we have a lot of great resources. And so on the website, we mentioned, all the different things that we talked about today. We actually have a comparing on versus off-campus housing that's, put together by Residential Life and their team, and some things to consider. We have information about how to select roommates, things to think about before signing a lease, so many great resources. So definitely check that out. And we're going to put it in the chat for you to see the link. We also want to encourage you to consider tuning into more of our webinars. So we're going to be hosting webinars all throughout the spring. The dates are listed on our website at the link that Melissa is putting in the chat. And we also will be emailing you with information about those upcoming topics. So stay tuned for more information. We encourage you to join the Family Association if you are not already a member. So our parent panelists today, who were completely fabulous and wonderful, are all members of our Family Association and our Family Council. And so they have always great feedback to share. It's a great opportunity for you to get involved and take advantage of a lot of exciting benefits. I want to mention that if you are not already a member, we are hosting our Spring Family Fling on April 1st through the 3rd. And so that is an exclusive event just for our Family Association members. If you have not joined yet, we'd love for you to do so. You can do that before February 10th to still get access to receive the invitation to register for Spring Family Fling. And Spring Family Fling is all about having fun with your student on campus and really exploring LSU's unique culture, cuisine, and just what makes Louisiana so special. So we hope you can join us for that. If you have any questions, we've said this several times, please connect with our office. We want to support you and your tiger throughout their journey here at LSU with any information and all information that you need. So never hesitate to reach out to us. We also encourage you to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. So with that, I thank you all again. Thank you again to our panelists. Good luck in the housing search process, whatever you and your tiger decide. I hope it is the best decision for them, and I hope that you are excited about that decision. We're here to help you along the way, though. So thank you so much. Thank you again to LSU Residential Life. I want to thank Mallory, who's been in the chat and the comments, answering so many of your questions, and Samantha, of course, for presenting. They are rock stars. So y'all have a wonderful evening. And of course, go Tigers.
Tigers.
Go Tigers.
Go Tigers, baby.
Tigers.